Welcome everyone to the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority meeting of Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. And could you do the roll call for us?
Absolutely. Michael Bartelme.
Present.
Alex Deek. Here. Bob Gunsel.
Here.
Tyler Kinley.
Here.
Marie Clough.
Here.
Harold Lazarus.
Here.
Jessica Letow.
Yes.
Molly McFarland. Darren McKinnon. Risha Narayan.
Here.
Keith Orr.
Here.
Phil Weiss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. First thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? All second. All in favor of the meeting agenda? Aye?
Aye.
Excellent. We have an agenda. Audience participation. I don't have anyone signed up, but is there anyone from the public who would be interested in up to 4 minutes? All right, moving right along. Reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter and Steve Kaplan. Look at this.
Hi, Steve Kaplan, on behalf of Ray Detter. Last night we had the Citizens Advisory Council meeting, and we talked just about a few short subjects, but they kind of touched on some ancillary things as well. The first topic that came up was the Garnet project. We found out at the end of our meeting that it passed, but in the meantime we were really mulling over the fact that it had been rejected, and we were trying to figure out why, and it sort of morphed into a discussion about PUD zoning versus C1A or any other kind of zoning that might permit the kind of buildings that we like without getting tied up into PUD zoning. And is PUD the thing that we want? There's different viewpoints even within our group about that. Obviously, citizen advocacy, I think, likes PUD because they get to meddle in the development process a lot more. It gives them a greater sense of control. I brought up, from my own personal opinion, that I think what it does is it starts to limit the developers who would be willing to even enter the fray because it becomes such a morass. We didn't come to any conclusion on that. We just talked in circles for a little bit. The next thing that came up was a revisit of the historic sound district ordinance. And we ran our own little field experiment at the meeting where we played 85 decibels within our room. It was really loud. There's a couple things that I was part of the meeting with Derek Delacourt, exactly, sorry, thank you. And the Arcures, it's the Arcures that I was running drawing blank on. So anyways, they had scheduled their own meeting to meet with Derek Delacourt to talk about this and find out exactly what the ordinance is proposing to do. As we understand it, the current attempt is to find a baseline decibel level that is that represents what we have today, and even though that would represent a rise in the number versus our current ordinance, it wouldn't be a loosening or a tightening of restrictions, just a reflection of what we have. The Arcures are firmly convinced that it's 85 decibels is a lot louder than what we have. I merely said that we need to make this data-driven and not so subjective. So we talked about ways to do that. In that conversation, something that did come up, and I don't know the answer to this, but it's something just to ask. And we talked about light levels, Susan brought up light levels, and we talked about how with night sky initiatives and things like that, focusing light where you want to illuminate things without just dispensing light everywhere. Does technology comparable to that exist with sound? So that would it be possible, I'm thinking of an example when I go to the Hands-On Museum with my kid, there's the weird plastic dome that you whisper into and you can hear across the room. It's a very targeted noise. I'm wondering if there's some sort of speaker technology like that where restaurants and venues could have the sound that they want where they want it, but it's focused enough that it doesn't spill out into the places where it might disturb someone sleeping. As a group of people, the Citizens Advisory Board, I think, needs to skew in defense of residents. So this, our side of this argument is how do we protect the peace and quiet for people who live there, while recognizing there is another side of the argument. I don't know that it's our job to plead that case. The next topic is really two topics. It touches upon parking, but it really talks about affordable housing. We talked about the lots, the available city-owned lots, and how they could be used for affordable housing. I didn't take a vote, but I did try to put a fine point on a position that I think we should come up with, which is that it will take development of every single city-owned site to be affordable housing to get even close to some sort of goal, so that we shouldn't be talking about this lot being better than this lot, or we should start here. And I think that that's a waste of time from our group's point of view, and that we should really just start talking about the how and the when of all of them. Parking then touched on this, because one of the arguments that starts to push back on development of any of these sites is, how can we lose our parking and who does it hurt? I was asking questions to Susan about how feasible would it be to try to keep parking parity at some of these sites, even though these are small, these would be smaller structures. Is it something that DDA could get involved with? Our discussion was that my 4 minutes.
It was. I didn't give you warning, though, so go ahead and finish.
That pretty much covers where we went. We sort of left it trying to figure out, could we focus a little more on parking, if only to make it less of a pushback on the part of merchants who surround some of these sites, to depoliticize the affordable housing. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, DDA member communications. I'd like to just kick this off with letting...
Can I say a quick thing before we go into other things?
Right.
Just because I want to respond to something that Steve said. So we're a university town. I'm going to assign homework. It is totally optional. There's a book written by one of the architects at the, or one of the professors at the architecture school, Malcolm McCullough, a book called Ambient Commons, which talks about the ethics of shared space, and he specifically touches on sound and light. It is delightfully dense and available. I'm happy to loan out my copy. But
I've been called that too.
Well played. But it's a fun book, and it doesn't speak specifically to policies, but it speaks about how we can start to craft values and public conversations around these very difficult
Great.
Conversations.
McCullough, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. With that, would just like to let everyone know that this group did spend 7 hours yesterday in a retreat. We largely talked about the architecture of how we do our work. I think we're going to talk in the future more about visioning. This was more about how do we get to that point, and how do we efficiently do our work. We are talking about doing a follow-up with Megan, who is the woman who ran, facilitator, thank you, to finish up some of the work about specifics of what committees we are going to need going forward. Did you want to do any summary of yesterday for us?
I hesitate to summarize because our views were, there were a lot of views. I think for every person at the table, we represent at least 12 opinions in good Ann Arbor spirit. There was a lot of lively conversation and I think productive tension around what work the board should be doing, even in the context of the meeting, right? Like, are we visioning? Are we working on the nuts and bolts of how our committees are working? Do we need to be talking about 2040 or do we need to be talking about next Wednesday? I'm not sure that we got to a good answer on any of those questions, but I really appreciated the conversation. I felt like I got to know a lot of my colleagues better, and I was grateful for the opportunity for newer board members, for you guys to have extra context. And I learned things, about the organization that I'd never known. So a lot of productive confusion is how I would call it.
Or as I think Rishi summed it up,
Clarity, question mark.
TM.
Anyone else want to add anything to the sort of public summary of what we did? One of the things we did say is we're going to relook at having assigned members to committees. And so everyone on the board will be getting an email shortly asking again, for a first and second choice of what committees you want to serve on, as well as some schedule questions that will be a part of that email as well.
And if I could, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, when we send that email out, if we could put the current times of the committees, because I know that was part of the, that would just be
Right.
helpful. Because some of us have maybe invites from years past on our calendar. Kelly pointed out to me. So.
Yes.
Thanks, Kelly.
One of the things that I'm looking forward to is there are several things that we need to have more conversation about, that we just started to touch on subjects that needed to be further discussed. And one that's near and dear to me is that when these committees were set up years and years ago, they were set up when the DDA had, I think, 1 or 2 individuals there. And now there's a staff of professionals that work here every day that know what's going on, have a good handle on it, and do a good job. And so what role do these committees play, should it change now that, because the dynamic is very different. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation in the future.
All right. Any other DDA member communications?
For the public, I hold 2 public engagements, you call them downtown halls, a coffee hour and a walking tour of current or upcoming downtown or DDA project. I've decided for 2020 to move to quarterly instead of every month. So the next 2 downtown halls will be in March, the first Wednesday and the first Saturday of that month. So I'll have more details about that next month.
Excellent.
Thanks, Keith.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Executive Director, Communications.
Thank
Susan.
you. So just on behalf of my colleagues, we just want to thank you guys. Your work yesterday was much appreciated. Your time was much appreciated. And as volunteers, you give so much to our community through your service. And yesterday was an example as we're looking to how to do our work more effectively and efficiently. But on behalf of my colleagues, we wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
All right. Minutes are on pages 3 through 13. We need a motion to approve them.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. They are approved. What's that? Yeah. Subcommittee reports. We'll start with capital improvements.
For sure.
Jessica.
So we'll start with a resolution. I'm going to move the following resolution, and at the end, I will ask for a second. It's a resolution to approve the selection of Fonts and Company as a contractor for the First and Ashley Street Improvement Project. Can I get a second? Thanks, Marie. To clarify, this resolution is the continuation of the First and Ashley improvements that began with our commitment in 2017 to restore two-way traffic on those 2 streets and install a protected bike lane on one of them in alignment with our goals and values. We received 3 bids. Fonson was the low bidder at $7.8 million. This fits within our approved project budget with city-funded elements of approximately $1.8 million and DDA-funded elements of approximately $6.05 million. We recommend approval of the resolution to approve the contract, including establishing a 12% contingency and approving the cost share agreement with the city. Amber, can I invite you up to talk a little bit about these projects, and then I'll open it up for our conversation.
So you're looking for an overview of the First and Ashley?
An overview of First and Ashley, yep.
Sure. So the projects include a restoration of two-way traffic on First Ashley and Kingsley. We can't forget about Kingsley
Thank you.
Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then in your discussions, based on public feedback, you chose to emphasize improvements on First Street and really go all in on improving First Street. So in addition to the two-way restoration, First Street includes a two-way protected bike lane. It also includes streetscape improvements, water main upsizing, and a gateway treatment at Liberty and First, where the future tree-lined trail will connect to the bikeway. And then in the commercial blocks of Ashley, between Washington and Huron, we are also implementing streetscape and lighting improvements. Did I capture?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Are
so.
there lighting improvements between Liberty and Washington?
Yes.
What is a gateway? Whatever.
Treatment.
Treatment.
Yeah, that is best shown in graphic form, but
Please draw it.
what we're doing there is, if you can picture the round planter at the bottom of the hill at First and Liberty, that is being removed, and that now becomes a plaza space similar to what we installed at Fifth Avenue and Detroit Street. And then all of those crossings get shorter, and we have streetscape improvements. So really it's these improvements that are meant to make it more comfortable and also announce that you're transitioning from the residential neighborhood into downtown. So really calling attention to it.
So you get your blank slate ice cream and you hang out right there.
Right, got it.
If I could add, and take a more broad view, these projects are a critical linkage to an on-street portion of the tree line trail. That project often gets misrepresented as being a $55 million project, but what it is turned out to be is a linkage of a lot of smaller efforts that are really being funded with a combination of funding. So this year you'll see the hopefully the start of the work on the Mishcon site, which will get us from the river to the berm opening project, which will have a groundbreaking this spring as well. The city is working with the county and some others on trying to figure out a safe crossing across North Main, get you to 721 North Main, get then through the easement that's been reserved at the Kingsley Commons, it gets us to First Street. So you'll begin to see bike and ped access from the river all the way through downtown. Those kind of linkages have proven to be beneficial to business as people are moving more slowly and they tend to stop. And then it gets us down really to Madison and then the connections further south. So to the credit of DDA staff and city staff, we've broken down what appears to be a really expensive project and have moved it forward with a large dose of other people's money besides just funds that come out of property taxes. So appreciate the creativity that the DDA staff put into the projects. A lot of obstacles to overcome when you work with older infrastructure with a lot of competing interests. So to get to this approval today is, a lot of people never see the lifting and work that's done before shovels actually enter the ground. So as a large kudos to Amber and staff for getting us here. It'll be a game changer for not just life downtown, but for all the businesses as well. So thank you.
And to sort of add on to that, the public engagement part of it, it was just enormous and incredibly helpful in terms of like drilling down to some of the detail of what makes a project like this successful to all of the stakeholders. So really impressed by that as well.
But also mention it provides a connection on the recently completed William Street bikeway, so you can get from campus down to the river without taking a car.
I think so.
Any further discussion? All right, so.
Oh, I'm sorry,
yes.
actually, can I do one more thing?
Yes.
I wanted to invite Maura up for a moment to talk a little bit. So the plans have yet to be set, since we obviously have not approved moving forward on the project, but to talk a little bit about the community engagement that you did maybe around 5th and Detroit, to give us an idea of what we can look forward to for businesses and residents on these two corridors.
Sure. Yeah, so we'll basically follow a similar strategy that we've done at 5th and Detroit, Huron, and William, which really engagement has already started. So we have had, following up on the workshops that we had in 2018, we've already had residents and businesses that we've been in communication with and have really continued to meet with. So those stakeholder meetings will continue. And then basically the way we handle this is there's a mandatory general contractor public meeting that will happen if this resolution is approved, probably around March, where we'll invite the public in, particularly the stakeholders on First Street, to talk about the construction project, to talk about timeline scheduling, and that's a way for us to capture people that are interested in the project, to get email addresses. So that's sort of where we start with the project. And similar to Fifth and Detroit, as Keith well knows, we will do ongoing email communications. We set up a specific Facebook group where we sort of chronicle the project, so it allows interested stakeholders and as well as the community at large just to kind of check in on the project. We do pictures. I mean, we keep it kind of light and as interesting as we can, but it's a way for people to keep informed. We've already started with our newsletter, kind of sending out teasers like, hey, in 2020, First Street's coming. So we'll follow a lot of the same tactics that we used for our other projects. And of course, we continue to improve and learn from those and try to do better. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Okay, I'm done.
I had a quick question, general question. There's still work on Huron, and so is there, just for relaying information to those that ask, does anyone know how those are coinciding, the remaining Huron work with upcoming First and Ashley work?
Sure. So for both projects, construction on both projects, we'd like to start as soon as the weather allows. So early spring. Huron, we just have a few more blocks, so our hope right now is to get that done before July. And then First and Ashley will be a 2-year construction. So that will be all of this construction season and the next construction season.
Will they overlap?
There will be overlap, yes. But on Huron, we'll only be closing the lane adjacent to where we're working, so the impact will be a lot less significant than what we experienced this past construction season. And DTE's work is complete, so that reduces the impact as well.
So the benefit of these projects too is that those are some of the most unreliable street lighting circuits in the downtown. So between the Huron Street and then First and Ashley, the circuits will be updated and they become city street lights. So the response time, should there be an outage, will be quicker as well. So as a side benefit to the work, a long-standing and persistent problem will be addressed.
They were unreliable because they would go out all the time?
The underground circuits were bad.
Oh, okay.
So that's what DTE's work is to improve those.
So interesting.
As long as we're talking about Huron, what's the latest from MDOT on Chapin?
So we still do not have an update from MDOT on Chapin, and I actually just sent another email communication this morning to see if city transportation staff can help us push further on that, as well as the MDOT permit for First and Ashley, because we are crossing Huron. So I suspect that that's something that we'll be bringing Howard into if we're not getting a response in the next week or so.
All right, thank you. So back to First and Ashley. Any more commentary, questions? All in favor of the resolution to approve the selection of Fonson Company, Inc. as contractor for the First and Ashley Street Improvement Project? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes.
Thank you, Keith, and everybody. So to update you on the People Friendly Streets Round 2, the RFQ has been released and includes the city's State Street components, and recommendations for that will be brought to the next committee meeting, which is Wednesday, 2 weeks from now, February 19th at 11 a.m.
Excellent. Thank you. Finance Committee.
Hello. First of all, we had the Bank of Ann Arbor representatives who provided an overview of our current issues affecting the stock market, the restriction placed on our investments, the investment of public funds, and the status of the DDA investment portfolio. They complimented Sarah on her help in consolidating the DDA's 4 investment accounts, which has made for better management. We reviewed the quarterly expense registers, the balance sheets, the revenue and expenditure reports were reviewed. We spent our main time at the committee talking about the up and coming budget. So I'd like to ask Sarah to come up and talk a little bit about the calendar, the process, the procedure, and some your thoughts on the budget.
Sure. The
budget this year, there's a couple of things, just even in the financial reports, that are a little bit different because of the new software that was installed in December. The pooling of cash and investments, and also the state mandated chart of accounts. We did a conversion, at least a partial conversion. Sometime we'll be continuing to make some changes related to that. But in the balance sheets, the cash investments and also accounts payable, you'll see those in every fund now. Previously, the TIF fund paid all the bills, and the other funds then reimbursed the TIF fund, which made for some extra entries that were booked whenever that happened. So now you won't see entries in the due tos and due froms that were there before. And those balance sheets are reported showing the balances last year at 12/31, the balances this year, so you can see the difference in the changes that those have made. In the revenue and expenditure reports, that's where you'll see the changes to the chart of accounts. You'll see some of the activity from last year in one account, but you'll see the activity for this year in another account where some things have been moved. We're starting to designate areas of activity where we're separating some of the accounting, so just for better reporting purposes. One of the main changes that we made was Republic's expense items are now all separated, and they're not mixed in with some of the things that we do here, like the electric bills and that kind of thing. So Mike has a better sense for what his budget is and is better able to manage that. As far as the budget goes, the first two reports were shown in the condensed format that the city approves. So by fund and also by category. The budget is actually approved by fund, and that gives us some flexibility to be able to move some budget items within funds as needed through the year. Susan is authorized to do that. In the budget reports, further down, you'll see the green bar worksheets where all the detail is shown. And this might be a little bit new, something that you haven't seen in this format before. This comes directly out of our accounting software. And this, again, excuse me, in this format, it's meant to give you all that detail, kind of that look behind the wizard's curtain, if you will, of the changes that are made and all the entries that are in there. But it might be helpful just to start with those consolidated reports to get a sense for where things are shifting. One of the main shifts there, you'll see that there are $9.8 million in pass-throughs that are budgeted for fiscal year 21. And those are just it's entries that are made from one fund to the next, where we're putting money, Susan says, from one pocket into the other. So transfers from the TIF fund into housing, and from the parking fund into the parking capital improvement fund. The parking side of that is definitely showing a big change, and that's related to the way that staff is starting to think about those funds and how they should be used. In the past, we took the Carl Walker maintenance program and we shifted money each year to meet those needs for maintenance. We're now looking at this a little bit differently, with the parking fund being a dedicated operating fund with regular expenditures, regular revenues. And then at the end of the year, we'll monitor that fund balance and make sure that there's that 15% minimum that we strive for, shifting the rest over to the parking capital improvement fund, where the major repairs and improvements will be recorded. The benefit to that is in some ways it's just clarity for us about where things are, and for you. It's also maintaining those fund balances in ways that make sense and that are easy to communicate. It's hard to explain in an operating fund high fund balances, and it was related to the way that we use those monies. So if we did a bond issue, that 15% that we kick in cash, that would come from the parking fund. Where now we're going to shift all of that over to parking maintenance. So any of those big ticket, one-off kind of expenditures will go there. And I think that's going to help just in the sense of clarity in operations versus other things. The other thing that's included in that packet is the 10-year plan. And this is a document that I know most of you have seen from time to time. It's interesting to me in this process that some of the schedules in that 10-year plan inform the budget, and in some ways the budget is informing the 10-year plan. So there's a lot of linkage between the two. And it's meant to give you that kind of long-range vision. You see the anticipated numbers for this year, the numbers that we're projecting or that we're requesting for next year, and then kind of the effects of that if the fund balance is going out. There's two schedules in there that I would draw your attention to. The grants schedule and also the capital improvement schedule. Those are the more discretionary areas where the decisions of this board really come to play. And those detail all of the projects and grants that we have planned for the next 10 years right now. We do have some packets over here, both the investment reports and also the Finance Committee packets. If anyone cares to have a paper copy, I know everybody received that by email, but those are there. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be on the 27th. Any refinements that are made to those budgets between now and then will come to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee will be asked to bring that budget to the board for approval to put that forward to the city. Per the state statute, the city approves our budget first, and then it comes back here in June, and this board will approve it at that time. Sure.
So the changes that you said that all make 100% sense and very excited for. I realize that's weird, but like I mean, the fact that we were moving like large amounts back and forth is like made it fairly confusing to understand it back in the day. What is the is it just like a initiative from you, or was it the software that was a real instigator for being able to do that? Both.
Some of both. So the state chart of accounts, that's initiated by the state. They're working on a revamp of that, and all municipal units are required to follow the state chart of accounts. So we're coming more in line with that. The software conversion, in talking with them, they suggested that we do that shift to as close as we can get to what the state is going to come out with. They have a preliminary version out right now. We do that now as a part of the conversion because that's a part of their system and how they're built to work. So that kind of jumped that off. The timing on some of those shifts would not have been my choice, but we were really, really excited that ESNA was able to get that done before budget season, because we were initially looking at May, but in talking with them and letting them know that our current software was, they weren't going to support after December 31st, they bumped us up. This might have been the quickest conversion that they ever did, which has pluses and it also has downsides. But yeah, the shift from parking to more of a capital improvement instead of maintenance, that's somewhat driven by conversations with Jada and Mike, and also somewhat the state chart of accounts and how that's scheduled. The state has a capital improvement fund kind of structure, and so it just made sense when we were making that change to kind of look at things that way. I think it's going to be much more beneficial going forward too.
But the fund names will stay the same, essentially?
They're tweaked a bit.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the numbers are all different, and the fund names have been tweaked a bit, but I'm hopeful you will be able to find your money.
Former finance chairs are getting jealous. Kind of over there.
Hang out long enough. Room for you.
No, I don't know.
Hang out long enough,
Looks
you
like
might come around.
Looks
Come back
like it's
around.
all easy, clean sailing.
Any questions? Anybody has any questions or any concerns or anything they'd like to chat about? I'm available. In particular, over this next week or two, I'd love to have input if anybody has any or any questions about anything.
I think on page 19 is the calendar that
There is, yes.
that we
Yeah.
talked about. We have this, I think, a unique procedure whereby we approve the budget, the city approves it, then it comes back to us for final approval in line with what the city did. So we'll be following this through until June, I guess. We'll be asked to approve the final.
Lots of steps, yes.
And next meeting?
Next meeting's Thursday, February 27th at 1 p.m.
Excellent, thank you. Operations Committee.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on my list is I'd like to move a resolution authorizing a contract with WGI for engineering services and project oversight. I'd like to ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you. Every year, the DDA undertakes repairs in the garages based on a 20-year plan which has come up with or assembled by WGI. We're doing lots of different restoration in several garages this year, estimated at a total of about $1.5 million. So we'd like to authorize a contract for $122,570 as detailed in the resolution on page 15 to hire WGI for the engineering services work, which will involve drawing up the construction documents, overseeing the bid process, and overseeing the contractor's work. So again, $122,570. In addition, the committee also recommends that WGI be authorized to gather data that staff can use to develop a strategy around installing many more EV chargers in the garages in support of the city's recently approved 2030 carbon neutrality goals. So that kind of sums up the resolution. Are there any questions, comments? Jada is here to answer them.
All right. Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution authorizing a contract with WGI for engineering services and project oversight, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you. In response to a request to post our permit wait list, the parking permit wait list on the DDA website, the committee supported the quickest, no-cost option, which will be to post a wait list as a PDF on the DDA website with regular updates. Staff, I believe, are undertaking this task and moving forward with this right now. Wanted to let you know about that.
Quick question.
Sir.
Are we posting names? Like that people?
I think names, but no, names and addresses, but no email addresses. Do I have that right? Or wrong?
Sort of right. So the information will include the original request date, their name, and the number of permit requests for each facility that they've asked for. We're keeping that in line with what we shared as part of the FOIA request earlier, or I guess late last year.
Are we notifying folks on the wait list that their information is going to be published?
Yeah, because that's not like, I don't think that's implied when you ask to be put on the wait list right now.
Correct. So right now, we don't have a plan to do that. What Kelly and I have been working on is kind of mocking up what this PDF will look like and sharing that with the DDA attorney. Again, he was, helping us through that FOIA request for similar information last fall. So we will certainly give him a chance to weigh in and speak to those questions before it goes up.
I can foresee that there's going to be a lot of returned mail or it's going to be hard to contact a lot of people on that list because they might not exist anymore, it might not be in business anymore, and so that might be a tough task.
But if
But that's the
governs that it's public information, then if
You have to give it out, you have to give it out.
That's right.
B, it's probably an indicator of what the wait list should look like.
Sure, it's going to skinny it up.
That actually might
For
be
sure.
a thing that we need to do anyway.
Yep.
So
We talked
you
about
have a generous amount of time to respond back and say whether you're still interested.
Thanks, Jada.
Jada, you just probably should stay right there. This is the Jada Committee. We renamed it yesterday. Staff are also asked to explore ways to create functionality on the website, such as signing up on the wait list, maybe perhaps a dashboard, a parking wait list dashboard. So we're taking payments that way, so those are ongoing discussions. No decisions have been made. I think staff is going to come back to the committee with some options, or we talked to some developers. Here's kind of some mock-ups of things that we could do. In response to the suggestion that patrons pay a fee to add their name to the list or to keep their name on the wait list, the committee talked about this and decided that whatever fee is charged that would be tied to the expense of creating and maintaining whatever online program we come up with. Again, ongoing discussion about that. We talked about monthly permit rate changes. We asked Jada to recommend a change to the upcoming permit rates, so there will be a cost equivalency between paying by permit and paying by the hour. Jada's recommendation is that we, by 2023, the permit rate would be, the standard permit rate for every garage would be $220 a month. We'll talk about this more at next month's meeting, but that was Jada's permit, and there seems to be consensus in the committee about that. Any comments or questions there?
Will you remind me where it stands right now? Is it 170?
180.
Yeah, 180.
Okay, thanks.
The Maynard customer service space. We sort of ran into a leasing opportunity at an office just south of the Maynard garage. We talked about that option. Jada researched it, talked with the landlord. There was some back and forth about it, and I think where it stands right now is that Jada and Darren and Tyler spoke after that meeting to discuss maybe a counter offer for the landlord. And I don't know if you've had those discussions with the landlord yet or not. Okay, so we're still in bed.
Put it out there, you could be watching on YouTube.
Okay, sorry, man. I'm just giving an update. We're still working on the Maynard customer service space. Let's sum it up that way. In your packet, there's the parking and transportation reports on pages 16 to 18. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to review. Are there any high points that we need to hit there, Jada? No? Any questions regarding the parking and transportation report? I don't think so. Not hearing any. The next Operations Committee meeting is February 26th at 1 p.m. right here. Thank you, Jada.
All right, thank you. Partnerships, Tyler.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I said 1 p.m., but it's 11 a.m. Unless we changed it. Did we change the next Operations Committee meeting?
No.
Okay. 11 a.m. on the 26th.
now Tyler.
Okay. So there has not been a partnerships committee meeting since our last meeting like this. So I'll talk about the next one, which is in a week. It's next Wednesday. Also note the time shift from 9 to 11. What you're holding is incorrect. It's actually at 11 a.m. here. It's going to be really informative. Jennifer Hall will be presenting on her work on affordable housing. We heard this in January, but we wanted her to come back because she's simply a wealth of knowledge both about affordable housing and its specifically its possibility here in Ann Arbor. I encourage anyone and everyone that can come, including those in the public that are interested. It truly is a really, really good presentation to hear. Also, we will have Jan Culbertson of the 2030 District to give a brief presentation in the beginning, and this is something that we talked about yesterday in our retreat. So timely, another thing, another reason to come to the meeting. Again, next Wednesday at 11 a.m. here, open to the public as well, so hope to see you there.
All right, thank you. Executive Committee, we, as usual, met at 11 a.m., 1 hour before this meeting. And as usual, went over the agenda. We did a little bit of discussion as well about yesterday, some follow-up discussions. And we will be meeting again next month, Wednesday, March 4th at 11 a.m. New business. No one has new business. Other audience participation, 4 minutes. Seeing none, looking for a motion to adjourn. Howard, second. Rishi, all in favor? Aye. Motion is adjourned.